Well, here we go, everyone. Welcome to our 2023 virtual barrel tasting party. Really great to see all of you. We had a great barrel tasting party here back in January, and we thought, well, there's probably a lot of our friends that didn't get to partake in that. And so we thought, what a great idea to do this again 7 months later. So we've sold, I think, or shipped out about 200 kits up to about 400 people at some point will be partaking in this. So that's pretty exciting. Um, just a couple things. Are any of you doing Andre Card's recipe for the puttanesca to go with this tasting? I have a feeling maybe some of you are doing that. I know Andre put a little work into that, and certainly I think would be a great dish to go with these high-powered reds. So just want to make sure, just a couple of housekeeping items, that everyone has already pre-poured their wines and no fair cheating. We're going to taste these wines together. So if you want to smell them now, you can, but let's wait till we get the show before we start tasting them. So it's kind of fun to taste and talk about these wines all at the same time. Allie tells me we have about 30 states represented here in our country watching this show tonight. So that's pretty amazing. It's a beautiful day here in the Napa Valley, finally cooled off. We're about 85 degrees today, but we've been over the 90s. So it's nice to kind of cool off a little bit. We have and a couple other things. It's best if you use speaker view. And so that way we're nice and big and you can hear us and see us well. And so let's see, what else? Well, let's go with introductions. So my name is Tom Davies, and I think most of you all know me. My 43rd vintage, the best to come here, 2023. And so Jason, you want to start off and do just a little quick introduction for yourself?
Of course. Hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jason Moravec, and I'm one of the winemakers here at Sattui Winery. I have a big focus on most of the wines here on bottling and blending, and then also a focus on all of our white wines during fermentation. And then maybe Pete, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Peter Velleno, winemaker with Sattui for about 15 years now. We all work collaboratively on all of our different blends, including with Tom and John. But my primary focus on my day-to-day is overseeing our barrel storage in the caves and making sure all the wines are topped and ready to go when we put together our blends. Brooks?
Yes, Brooks Painter. Many of you we've had a chance to meet over the years. I'm in my 19th year with Sattui Winery, and it seems like we've come a long way. We've certainly added a lot more wines, and those that we had before, we continue to make improvements on. And I think you'll find today the wines we've chosen for this tasting are going to be showing well, and I certainly hope you enjoy it.
John?
Thanks, Tom. I'm John Winkelhaus. I'm part of the crew here that hopefully keeps the place running, and I'm always chasing Tom, trying to make sure that he's not doing too much. This will be my 14th vintage here at Sattui, and if you go back to when I was just a humble farmer, this would be my 25th vintage in the wine business. So really excited to be here and welcome all of our all that have tuned in, and don't forget to chat if you want, if you have a question. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, John. Definitely the chat function's there. We'll do our best to answer that during the show. And so that's because we need that interaction here. So we've set this tasting up today just like we would be doing it here at the winery. And that is, we have the wines side by side. If you come up, and often we're tasting in the tower, and you'll see Brooks and Pete and Jason and John and I, and we're there tasting wines, and we'll line these up and taste them. And then we talk about them. And that's, I think, the best way to really evaluate a wine is not only make some notes and what you think of it, but also then to discuss it. So anyway, and then just lastly, we kind of picked and choose what we thought were ones that we had enough to do this tasting with today. These are all wines in short supply. But we went out, and you'll see today we've added some wines to this tasting that were virtually almost sold out, but we wanted to include them anyway. So we are giving you the opportunity to get some of these wines that are in really short supply, and giving you that chance to, hopefully taste them and then buy them if you think they are to your liking. So I know everyone's really anxious at this point to get with the tasting, and so I'd just like to put this out to the panel, and maybe Brooks in particular to start with, and maybe just a little bit about the 22 vintage, and just to kind of preface that as before we start tasting these wines.
Well, it's interesting. I've often heard the phrase California has the same growing characteristics year after year after year. And it's certainly not true at all. Going back to 2013, 14 drought years, dry, 15, 16 dry yet again. So we had about a 3 to 4 year drought period. 17, 18, 19, more rainfall. 2021 dry, and 22 dry yet again. So 21 was actually the driest period we've had in the last 10 years. In fact, it really set a record. So following 21, we had the 22 vintage, and the seasonably very dry, which often bodes well for the grapes as long as you have the drip system and can keep them moist and growing to the extent that we're trying to achieve here, so that we have balanced leaf cover to handle the quality of the grapes we're after. And that's how most of 22 went. And the earlier varieties, for example, Zinfandel, the early white varieties came off. They were beautiful because it was accelerated a little bit with the dry soils. The acidity levels were great, high, well-balanced wines. And then we hit a wall in early September, a heat wall, and it just really threw us for a loop. We had to stop picking for about 10 days. It didn't really know what the future held because it was so hot. We were really concerned about a lot of dehydration in the grapes. And so we were a little bit concerned at that point. Then we turn around and we get a fall rainfall, a deluge. And so it was a total mixed harvest, kind of a tale of two seasons almost. The weather in September actually drove the sugar levels back down on the grapes. So we had to wait a little bit. And as is often the case here in California, we in October, we get a little bit of an Indian summer, some nice warmth to continue the maturation process. And we were able to bring in the grapes in really, really good condition. The heat wave did take its toll. The yields were down by about 25 to 35% in many of the varieties. But the good news is everyone's in agreement that concentration that we have this year is fabulous. And so 2022 vintage, it should be really, really excellent. And I think you'll find today, tasting these wines, you'll see that.
Yeah, thank you, Brooks. And John, do you have some recommendations, or maybe just to kind of share with everyone how this program works, and perhaps maybe some of your recommendations on buying futures?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. So the one thing about buying futures, I think, is first and foremost, it's just fun, and this is your opportunity to not come to the winery here and taste the wines out of the barrels. We've done that for you. We've sampled them for you, and it's a great wine. It's a great way to get wines that you'll want to be able to cellar or enjoy in about 10 months. I think we're about 10 months away from bottling any of the red wines. Is that about right, Brooks?
Yes. We'll begin late spring next year. Yeah.
All right. And then as far as the wines that I'm looking forward to tasting more than anything is the Vangone, but we'll get to that in a little bit. And I might mention that a couple of the most popular wines that we that we have, the Qualia and the Black Series, is already sold out. But we've got just a dynamite Zinfandel that is very popular as well. So this is the time to purchase futures. They're just priced right, and I have a feeling that we'll probably be bumping these prices a little bit in the future as the amount of cases we have to sell as futures starts to diminish. So, Tom, that's kind of my sense, but maybe we can ask Jason a question as well and see what he might think about the vintage as well.
Yeah, so far looking at the 2022 vintage, we're watching these come right along. We check in on them almost weekly or monthly and tasting them, seeing how they're coming. A neat part about the future program is that we actually showcase one of our barrels down in the cellar club. So it's a great reason to come to the winery and taste these wines as they evolve. All the 2022 reds are still down there. They'll be down there until we pull them for bottling, which will be a little bit later when we are starting to showcase the 2023 vintage.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting a little thirsty here. These wines have been nicely aired out in my glasses right here. And John, since you were just talking about some of your favorites, I think it's appropriate that you jump in on this Merlot. We were just talking about this wine before we went on stage here, and I just was commenting to Brooks that this color is amazing for a Merlot. But anyway, this is your wine, so go ahead and introduce it.
Well, I'm really happy to have this wine back and available for sale. We've run out of this wine in the last 3 or 4 years pretty quickly, so we've not had a lot of Merlot to sell, and I think this year we're probably going to be a little bit light on Merlot once it's in the bottle as well. So again, if you like Merlot, this is a great time to get it. Remember, there was no 2020 vintage, and we're just getting ready to release the 2021. But right now, with the 2021, again, I think it's a great food wine. It's really a lovely dark color with a great flavor profile. Softer tannins, which is something I really love about Merlots. And but perhaps, Jason, you might want to amplify a little bit on what you find in this wine as well.
Of course. Let me go through some of how I like to taste wines whenever I'm assessing them. First, you always kind of look at the color. Like we already mentioned, the color on this is absolutely amazing. It's really dark for a Merlot. It's a beautiful, great ruby color. Then we dive into the aroma. And this really has a really nice cherry, blueberry muffin, vanilla coming in from the oak. So a really nice oak balance supporting all that fruit. And then we can go in and taste it on the palate. Oh, and you can really tell for a Merlot, it's very soft and smooth. Even though this is a 2022, it's still not in bottle yet. It's a barrel sample. It's already starting to develop, gives you an idea of the sense of quality of this, and a really nice long fruit finish.
Jason, what's your favorite food to pair with Merlot?
Oh gosh, Merlot. Whenever I think of Merlot, I have to think of like these really herb-infused dishes. I love pairing it with things like, Thanksgiving's coming up. So things like roasted lamb, braised short rib, or grilled duck. They really go well with Merlot. If you're leaning towards a pasta, it's got to be a red-based tomato pasta. And then if you were to pair this with a dessert, I would go with a dark chocolate. I think that the wine's fruitiness really contrasts well with the bitterness of a dark chocolate.
So Pete, let's tell the group and all that are here how this wine is handled in the cellar. What are some of the basic fermentation and aging protocols that you use for this wine?
Sure. So the goal for Merlot is to create a red wine that is silky in texture, generous fruit flavors, mouth-watering. Well, some vintages might end up being fairly tannic. That's not the true goal when we're making Merlot. Cabernet has a certain expectation where it needs to be well-structured, age-worthy. With Merlot, we're really looking for plushness and silkiness on the palate. So what we do while we're fermenting, we have to be really careful with skin contact. So as we go later in the fermentation, we start extracting higher levels of tannin. We want to be careful not to go too far with that. Other thing we do during aging would be, we don't use quite as much new oak barrels as we would, new French oak barrels as we would with Cabernet. We really want the fruit to shine through on the Merlot. We don't want to cover that up. Cabernet can handle a bit more. Merlot is a bit more subtle in its flavors, and the fruit is a bit more on the red side. So we want to create a wine that is generously fruity, silky, not overpowering with the oak. Another aspect of that is that we don't age it for quite as long in the barrels. It's closer to 18 months than 20 months. So as we get into our bottling season, the Merlot will be on the earlier side for our Bordeaux red wines, whereas Cabernet is on the later side.
Thank you. And Brooks, perhaps make it a big comeback now. Why is that?
Well, I think Merlot is finally being planted in many of the right soil types. I think for a long time, as Merlot expanded, and there was a huge demand for Merlot because most people were curious about it. They love the name, which, by the way, comes from the French word for blackbird. A little known fact, but it's the most widely planted red grape variety in Bordeaux, and there's a couple different ways, different approaches a winemaker can take. You can make a little bit of a lighter style, something that's more oriented towards red fruit and not so tannic, not so the alcohol being more moderate. And that works really well in a cool climate for blending. Here in Napa Valley, we are always looking for big, ripe characteristics in our red wines, and that's exactly what we try with our Merlot. So we have it grown in a variety of soils, from very gravelly to some deeper clay soils. And Merlot can be a little delicate. The grape skin is susceptible to shrinkage and shriveling during heat waves. So it's nice to have a little extra water availability for Merlot, and the clay soil seems to alleviate that shriveling aspect. So you can hang the fruit a little bit longer. I love Merlot on its own. It's a fabulous blender. I couldn't agree more with Jason's comments about the food pairing. For me, I want something a little gamey, whether it's duck or venison or lamb, with a herb sauce. So those are great choices.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Those are great choices. Just lastly, I'll let John wrap this up, but I hope those of you that are enjoying this Merlot, please know that this is really an amazing Merlot. It's so generous, has so much fruit, and even just in the 7 months that from our barrel tasting party to this virtual barrel tasting party, this wine has just opened up and blossomed. And I think the French kind of laugh at some of the Americans because we have a tendency to bash Merlot. And I think they do know a few things over there about making wine. I think we're starting to teach them a few things now ourselves. But there is a place for Merlot, and with the right foods, it's an amazing variety. And I'm so glad it's on a comeback. And when we're doing our food pairings or putting dinners together, often Merlot is one of those wines we often reach for because it is a great pairing wine. So, John, why don't you go ahead and wrap this up?
I'll just echo what you just said, Tom. It's just a great food wine. I find it to be really silky, smooth, expressing soft tannins. I think it's a wine that can be cellared, and ours is a great expression of the Napa Valley Merlot. It's right now. If I could bottle it, I would, but I think it'll even get better a little longer in the barrel.
And, we'll be selling it before you know. We're so short of this wine. We're releasing the 21, and there's not much of that made. So this 22, I think by the time it hits the bottle, we might be having it for sale. Well, hey, let's move on. So now we're going to hit some Zinfandels, and Brooks. You love all our wines like you love your kids, and it's hard to pick out favorites, but you have on a number of occasions have ranked Gilsson as one of your favorites, and now unfortunately I might want to say it was one of your favorites, and maybe you want to elaborate on that.
Well, I discovered this vineyard, I think in 2007, I believe. We've been making this wine for about 15 years now, I think. At any rate, here's a picture of the vine itself. It's these old craggy vines, and the pruning method is a little bit different. They tend to stand a little taller in the vineyard. And as I walked through the vineyard the first time, it seemed to me I was walking through a vineyard of standing soldiers at attention. It was just really dramatic to me. And you could see that the grapes are well separated, which is important to keep a good airflow and a good maturity in each individual cluster. And it's a no nonsense Zinfandel. Clearly, it's big, it's dark. Oftentimes we look to blend a bit of Petite Syrah in with some of our Zinfandels, and this particular wine never needs a boost at all. It's just so complete, so rich, and with layers of flavor. And so it's always been one of my favorites. It certainly is definitely more of an expressive, a bigger style Zinfandel. And yes, unfortunately, the needs of housing here in California and demands for new houses in areas of our state has now moved forward. So this vineyard was pulled out and is now becoming annexed to a city, and it will be used for housing. It broke my heart to see it go, but time marches on, and we intend to find more excellent Zinfandel vineyards. In fact, we have an update for you later that will be very interesting in terms of Zinfandel.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, very, very sad. So this, unfortunately, is our very last vintage of Gilsson Zin. So that's something that I hope some of you would think about putting away in your cellars. We make at any one time 13 or more different Zinfandels, Brooks. Just how does this fit in with our portfolio compared, let's say, to Lodi or Amador or Dry Creek or Napa? Is it how singular is it?
Well, this is Russian River. It's a little bit of a warmer part of Russian River, so it's not as spicy, perhaps, as the more coastal areas of Russian River Valley. But I think it's more akin to Dry Creek in that it's got big weight, it's got a lot of tannin, a lot of structure. Amador is quite different. It's a little bit more, how would I say, just a riper profile. Lodi is very jammy and soft and sweet and just delicious to put in your mouth and roll around on your taste buds. So I think that all of our Zinfandels are standalone wines in their own right. And we go and seek these vineyards with the intention of making a whole stable of Zinfandels. And each one is going to be individual and unique, and will have a different enjoyment, different use with food and wine pairing, etc.
Jason, how does the age of these vines affect the flavors and the complexity? And maybe talk a little bit about this, these heritage clones that make this Zinfandel so amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. What makes these Zinfandels taste unique and different? We make different over 13 different Zinfandels. And first, I would say it's the terroir, it's where they're grown. This one specifically, like you said, is Russian River. But secondly, how long has that vine grown in that one location? It really is changing and influencing these wines quite a bit. Say for the first 5 years, you plant a vine and it's just developing. You're not going to get much of any fruit off of it. From 5 to 15 years, you're kind of in that golden era where it's going to be producing its maximum amount. And this is where it's getting its highest yield. After 20 years, you start to lose the amount of yield that you get. So your crop load gets lower and lower. You have less clusters per that vine and shoots that you have. So the vine is able to put more nutrients into what fruit is left. And so we say once we get to 50 years old, we call that old vine Zinfandel. And we find that once you get to that point, the yields have dropped in more than half. And the intensity and concentration of those Zinfandels is absolutely phenomenal. And this Gilsson was planted in 1960. So that's putting it just at about 62 years old. It would have been amazing to see how it progressed even more. So it is very sad that we won't get to continue working with it. But I mean, it really showed that this wine was something special. And this being the last vintage, I mean, this is where I take out my pen right now and make a mark on this one, because this is going to be a collector's item, I'd say, in the future.
I agree. Hey, Wink, you know, you spend a lot of time with a lot of the folks that are online today and visiting with them down in the Cellar Club. You know, what are some of the comments you hear from our guests about this particular wine?
Well, one is we get frequent requests to open the Gilsson up in the bottle, and so that's a tell for me. And then it's also one that our guests and our members love to be able to taste out of the barrel. It's and this one I was just comparing the Gilsson to the Merlot. I mean, the contrast between the flavors and the intensity of the flavors in the Gilsson versus the Merlot. I mean, I love the Merlot, but this is just really, really good. And I'm sad that it's not going to be around much longer. And I know that tasting this wine in the Cellar Club or even up in the main tasting room, when we taste it up there, there's always 1 or 2 bottles going into somebody's case. Sometimes a case going out the door as well. So it's just one of those wines that is just a tremendous value, and a wine that I think will also cellar and mature and be a great addition to anybody's cellar.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah, please.
No, I was going to say, Brooks, are you ready to wrap this up? Or John, did you have any last comments before Brooks wraps this up?
No, I think Wine Enthusiast gave this the 2020 a pretty nice score. I think it was like 22 points on this wine itself. So
Maybe 92 points.
92 points, excuse me. Yeah, 22 is a little low. I'm thinking about the vintage.
I do have one question. Maybe we could make it brief, but Pete, you see all these red grapes come in, you're managing most of the red harvest. And so when the Gilsson shows up, what are some of the characteristics you see in the grapes and during fermentation from this wine?
Yeah. So as Jason said, the older vines, and they're out of Russian River, which is generally cooler than Napa. So what we're seeing with this particular Zinfandel is just really great concentration, as was mentioned. So the berries are very consistent. Some Zinfandel vineyards that we work with, there's a lot of variability between berry sizes and ripeness. And the Gilsson's always been one that's been very consistent. And I think that follows all the way through to the wines. It's really sad to see this one go. It's always been one of our favorites for sure. And the consistency is one of the hallmarks of this wine. If we had to grab any Zinfandel from our portfolio and we didn't know what vintage we were grabbing, I would say go to the Gilsson because it's never going to let you down. It's always, been a fantastic wine, and I think that's why our Cellar Club members have loved it for so long.
Yeah, agreed.
Thanks, Pete.
Well, Brooks, you want to wrap this up, or are we?
Oh, I don't know what else to add, other than I'm gonna cry a few tears, this harvest, not going and visiting that vineyard. My soldiers standing at attention out there, they're just a memory now. It's unfortunate, but there's a lot of other great Zinfandel vineyards that we look forward to working with this year.
Well, and speaking of great Zinfandel vineyards, the next wine down the line here is our 22 Schoolhouse Zin. And before we talk about this, let's hear from Joe Ramazzotti, who as a young man helped plant these vines about a half century ago.
Schoolhouse Creek Vineyards was the old Peterson Ranch.
Now we're not seeing the video.
When we first got here from Italy in '58, and the Peterson family, Carl and Alice, took.
Yeah, we just saw the.
And then it was a natural for me to come back and farm it when the new owners bought it. This is all Zin, and then there's a little block along the road which is Petite Syrah, but this is old style Zin. The harvest, this is actually the old Mazzoni clone, Century clone, and because I remember this was all planted to rootstock, and we budded this vineyard. Well, it is a special piece. So this has never had any water except natural rainwater. There's a beautiful spring right up here above us that covers this whole hillside with water underneath. And these vines, look at them, they're still in great shape at this late in the year. And it's a very special spot. Well, the new owners didn't know anything about vineyards, so they trusted in me to handle it right for them. And I've had, which is so lucky. Besides Sattui, I sell it to 5 different little wineries, and it's been just well received from everybody and stuff. And it's just a gorgeous spot. So just a minimal fertilizer and pruning, and always dry farm vineyard. You need to cultivate it every year, so there's no competition from the grasses and weeds. Zinfandel seems to do so much better. There's a lot of Zin on wire and drip, but not this one. We're so lucky. Again, we have such a beautiful spring, and these vines, they're called head prune vines this way. They don't overcrop them. You can't overcrop them, and that's why they last for so long. And this taproot on these vines will go down almost 20 feet searching for water, and that's about where that spring is at. So that's why they look so beautiful at this stage of the year. And they've survived through 50 years so far without any man-made water, only from natural rain. The heritage clone that was at least 100 years old, and it was. They still don't know exactly where it came from, but here in Dry Creek Valley, that was one of the main varieties planted, and most people wanted to always keep. It's a smaller clone Zinfandel, and not a big bunch. And so they just love the flavor of it, and it ripens early, and it doesn't overcrop. That was another big advantage of it. After the gold rush in 1849, all the Italians, when they got here, never made any money with gold, but they saw the landscape and they loved it. But they brought their cuttings with them. At that time, it was mostly Primitivo. We still don't know, to tell you the truth, where exactly the Zinfandel variety came from. They think it's Croatian. But the old Italians then started planting these vineyards just like the old country, because the area looks like their country. They always kept it to 2-3 tons to the acre. And head prune vines, unless you leave so many spurs, you can't overcrop them. And by keeping it that way, it just prolonged itself. It could withstand the 100 years that it has on it. This vineyard has almost 50 years on it, and they still look like fresh, young vines. No other variety can withstand. I don't know of any other variety, 100-year-old Cabernet, Chardonnays, or anything. Just Zinfandel seems to have survived this whole deal. And some of them, there's some plantings in the Sierra foothills from 1849, still viable. They call this Schoolhouse Creek Vineyards because of the creek that flows right through here by that beautiful stand of firs that flows right into the into the dry creek. And it used to be a salmon run. The salmon used to come up that creek and spawn. We're right behind us, of course, the sun sets right to the west. It is right behind us. This gets that full exposure all day long of that beautiful western exposure sun. So they get sun from the morning to the night. That's why they ripen so early, and they love this area. It was planted because of the way it was to keep the rows at a certain level. So as we drop down, they wouldn't be a complete drop off. They kind of terrace themselves. Again, the old Italians found out that Dry Creek was the perfect spot for their grapes. And they tried other varieties, Sauvignon Blanc, they tried Cabernet, they've tried everything, not at this site right here, but along Dry Creek. And they figured out after 100 years that Zinfandel seems to be, just loves it here. It does not overcrop, it ripens early, and it seems to grow very well in this environment. I think it's from the sun exposure and this soil that's here.
That's a great video. And, you know, I can't keep this secret any longer. It's you all are the first to hear this, but as of today, we just closed. Sattui is now the proud owner of Schoolhouse Creek. We got tired of losing vines and old vine zins. And, you know, I started thinking about all the vineyards we've lost. So we used to have the Doherty ancient vine that is now Holmes, the Crow Ridge, Holmes, Gilsson, Holmes, Qualia, soon to be Holmes. And we just figured that there's only way to stop this tide is do what we can. And so our bank account now has a big hole in it. I just transferred the funds yesterday, and you know, the good news is that Joe Ramazzotti has agreed to continue farming it for us. You know, even though we do all our own farming, it's a little ways out of where we normally farm. And, you know, since Joe planted these vines 50 some years ago, there's actually a block that's over 70 years old there. And so we're so excited. And just like Joe said, the vines, I just was up there 2 days ago, and warm summer days, those vines look like there's the water faucets on them. I mean, they just look so healthy. You know, the yields are low, and that's what happens when you get old vines, but the vines are in really good shape. And anyway, I just like, you know, enough of that. Let's have the winemaking team just talk a little bit about what makes this Schoolhouse Zin so great. This is 2015 was our first vintage. We have the last couple vintages have been getting scores of 92, 93, Wine Enthusiast. I mean, it's been scored well. It's a really great, popular wine here at the winery. But let's talk a little bit about what this wine's about.
Well, the Dry Creek, I'll go ahead and start, and then I'll turn it over to Jason and Pete. Dry Creek is a unique area. It's just north of Russian River Valley and west of Healdsburg. And there's the coastal range. You saw Lake Sonoma there in the video. Right behind Lake Sonoma are some fairly large hills and the coastal range there. In fact, we're not far from the Rocky Ridge Vineyard, which we just started working with last year in the Rock Pile appellation. But what I wanted to mention is they have a lot of morning fog that comes over those coastal mountains. And so unlike the Gilsson, which is a little softer, rounder in the finish, and I think this is probably why the Italians love Dry Creek so much, there's always a touch more acidity in this wine. And it really makes it a great balanced wine, perfect for matching whatever food you want to throw at it. But it does have a nice level of acidity. It's not as big and jammy as Gilsson, for example, but it's just lovely balance and very tasty wine. We're just so pleased to have an opportunity to buy this property and farm it as our own until who knows what, until it's 100 years old or later, but it's so much fun to be working with these vines and working with Joe, who came as a young kid to Dry Creek, and if anyone knows Dry Creek Valley, it's Joe Rumbazzati. So it's going to be a great relationship and great wine.
Well, thanks, Brooks. There you go, folks. This is our very first old vine vineyard Zinfandel for V Sattui. We've been, making these wines. I think the very first, and at least in the modern era, was Suzanne's Vineyard Zinfandel back in the late '80s, and that was, and we had to pull that because those vines were not doing well. So to really have an old vine Zin Vineyard in our repertoire and that we own is very exciting, and I'm really happy about that. Well, look, we got a lot more wines to taste and some more exciting news. So, Jason, why don't you introduce our next wine of this first flight?
All right. So this is going to be the fourth wine here. So this is the last wine on this first flight. This is the 2022 Napa Valley Syrah. And just by looking at this, oh my goodness, there is just so much color. And the trick to this is you can wow all your friends. You can do blind tastings and always pick out the Syrah, because if you look at the hue of the color red here, it kind of leans a little bit more to a purple hue or like a blue tone to it, rather than like a brick red. And so that's a very popular characteristic of any Syrah. And then especially from Napa Valley, it's just so exuberant, so deep. And so it's just the first thing that pops out to me. Diving in, we can give this guy a smell. Oh, and it has just so much to give. I mean, Syrah, typical Syrah is always going to have like a little bit of a gamey character to it, and I think this one definitely has that, combined with these cranberries and ripe raspberries, and a nice subtle oak vanilla to it that just supports all that fruit. And then let's just taste it on the palate. You can really get all that grape structure. The palate is full all the way from the beginning all the way to the end, and it finishes with a bunch of fruit that is just so giving. An excellent example of Napa Valley Syrah. Now, a Syrah, also known as Shiraz, depending on what country you're in, different names for the same variety. But over here in Napa, this is a good representation of it. If you're over in France, a Syrah would typically be coming from northern Rhone. So this is in the appellation in France of Rhone. And just to talk a little bit about our other Rhone varieties, that'd be either a Grenache, Syrah, or a Mourvedre. Of those three, Syrah is always going to be the boldest and biggest. And then the Grenache and the Mourvedre are a little bit more of supporting role characters for a blend like a GSM. And of course, this Syrah is going to go amazing with grilled meat. So think barbecue, think wild boar, or even like a mushroom dish like truffled pasta. Those types of dishes are just going to meld into a wine like this, and they're going to support each other. They're not going to taste odd side by side. They're just going to actually accent and give more praise to the dish and to the wine. So absolutely amazing. And then taking a look. So Brooks, I believe we made this Syrah from two different vineyards. Can you tell me a little bit about those two, Hibbert and Carthy?
Sure. This is all estate Syrah for us, and most of you are familiar with the Carthy Vineyard just south of Yountville, and also the Henry Ranch, renamed Hibbert Ranch in Carneros. And so both of these are varied climate. The Carthy Ranch, because it's still the southern end of Napa, below the cutoff in Oakville, there's a really distinct change south of Yountville, north of Yountville in terms of the climate and the heat accumulation. So this is still relatively cool climate there in Yountville. And these vines are, I think they're about 18, 20 years old or so. I'm trying to remember exactly. But we also are growing Syrah down in Carneros, and that's a cooler climate. And my particular background with Syrah was coastal Syrah, much of it coming from Santa Barbara County, for example, Santa Maria Valley, very cool, windswept, foggy areas. And you just get a different type of Syrah character from that growing condition. So here we have a little bit of both, and they both go quite well together. The Carsi being a little bit more of the grilled meats, smoked meat, and then the Hibbard Ranch having just a real powerful aromatic herbs, savory character to it, and the two go together quite well. And we also, of course, anything Rhone we love here, so Grenache and Mourvedre. And then we actually, I have a new announcement. We are growing a new variety from that neck of the woods, the Rhone River Valley, which is called Counoise. We planted that last year here at Vittorio's vineyard. So down the road, we're going to be adding a fourth Rhone variety to some of our blends, which will be really fun.
Exciting.
Well, it's a delicious wine, and boy, Pete and Jason Brooks, you have definitely the Midas touch when it comes to dealing with these Rhone varieties, and thank you for that. They're just terrific wines, and you know, the meatiness, the smokiness, from a non-smoke vintage. It's very, very nice. Congrats. Well, look, I think we're there. We've reached the halfway point. And so as we move to our next flight, we're going to have a video, and then and I have an announcement. So I'm going to make the announcement first, and then Allie's going to run a little video. And then while we're running the video, you all can switch to the next flight. But we have some more great news to share with you. And maybe some of you that were on the cruise this year heard about it. We haven't really had a chance to come out too publicly with this, but earlier this year, we decided at both our wineries, at Sattui and Castello di Amorosa, that we're farming all our vineyards 100% organically. And as you know, we've been farming Vittorio's organically now for 11, 12 years or more. But this is a big deal for us. Right now, it's about 350 plus acres or more, and it's quite the conversion. I know our whole grape growing team and wine team is really, really excited about this. But you know, let me add this: it's not just about farming organically. I like to look at this as that we have developed here at Sattui more of a holistic way of how we run our business. And it's not just about, you know, our farming practices, but it's, you know, how we treat our environment, treat our lands, also how we deal with our staff and our community, and how we govern our governance of our company. And, you know, are we, you know, having good business ethics, or how are we treating our employees, and on and on. So it's a really more of a complete package. And I think in today's world and beyond, it's to have success and to be a great business, you almost have to check all those boxes. And I'm so proud that, you know, a lot of these initiatives that, you know, in addition to the organic farming, you know, like for instance, we have now a great program for ride sharing. We're paying now people up to $20 per day if they ride share, if they take a couple people to work with them. And I could just go down the list of all the things that we're doing, not only in farming and reducing our carbon emissions, but safety training and how we treat our employees, and access to healthcare, and those of you that know me well know that we're really active in our community with healthcare and with grape growing, and so it's more than just farming organically, but that's a big deal. So Allie's got a great video to show us now, and then we're on to the next flight. As you know, we made the commitment earlier this year to go 100% organic in our vineyards.
It's really nice.
And I'm so proud that we made that decision. And here we are, we're in Vittorio's vineyard, Cabernet Sauvignon. Now, this particular vineyard, we've been farming organically for nearly 10 years, is that right?
It's going to 10 years now.
But now we've taken this and gone to our hundreds of other acres.
Yes.
And one of the challenges that we've had farming organically has to do with weeds.
Exactly. Weeds, they take a lot of water from the ground, and we need more water for the vines to grow healthy. So it's a lot of competition.
When folks, visitors to the Napa Valley, drive up the valley, and often they see these pristine vineyards. There's not a weed growing in them.
Oh, yes.
You know, we know as insiders that what they've been doing, they've been using Roundup.
Yes.
And Roundup is something that came out back in the 70s and was really the miracle herbicide at the time. It just did a really efficient job killing weeds. And so it made work for farmers really around the world so much easier.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that Roundup that was the favorite for everybody. Household too. You go to Home Depot and buy it. But here for the vineyard, we just no use anymore. That's it. The 380 acres that we have, we don't use that anymore.
You know, certainly there's been lawsuits, and even the state of California recognizes that glyphosate, which is the active compound within Roundup, is a known carcinogen. You know, when you use an artificial herbicide, it kills other really good beneficial microbes.
So not using Roundup, we get some weeds. They create nitrogen also for the vines.
You know, to have the best quality grapes, to make the best quality wine, you need healthy soils.
That's true, 100%.
You know, we've been growing Cabernet here since the 80s on Vittorio's site. This is the one that's right next to the winery. And I've seen a change in the wine since we've been farming organically. I mean, it's always been a great Cabernet for us and a solid Napa Cab.
Yes.
But in the last 5-7 years or so, it's really elevated itself among the best of our Cabernets. So I think it's about the only variable.
That's it. That's the difference. If you taste the wine different, that's because of that.
And certainly it costs us more to use like this mechanical Clemens. You still need to come back through here with shovels.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it's a vineyard manager. We had to use this machine. It takes a lot of weeds in between the vines, but we had to come in because around the vine, we had to do it by hand. So that means more labor. We had to have people with shovels or weed eaters in order for us to clean around the vine. So yes, I mean, it's a lot more money.
At Sattui, we're also trying to take this perhaps holistic approach to farming. And it's not just healthier soils, it's better for our planet. We're not poisoning our soils, you know, and I care about our staff. I feel better about having you and your team out here, not having to spray these synthetic herbicides or pesticides that can be very harmful.
In the vineyard department, we think everybody goes organic.
Yeah.
Because now we're free to sit down here, have our lunch, and not worry about contamination here. So I'm proud of Sattui going organic, and other people that are going into it. That's great. That's for us in the vineyard, we're just perfect.
And I'm not exaggerating. We've calculated it's probably going to cost us more than $500,000 this year to make this conversion, and those costs just keep on going because of that hand labor.
But look at it this way: better wines, better taste, and better for everybody. So we're working for Sattui for a long time. This is the best decision. Thank you. Thank you.
Running detractors more often, we're weeding, that increases our carbon footprint.
Yes.
And so here we are trying to do right by our soil, right by our planet. And then to do that, we have to burn more diesel fuel.
Exactly.
We have a solution. Let's go look at it.
All right, all right.
Well, David, as we farm organically and we have now more tractor passes, of course, that would affect our carbon footprint. And
Yes.
so as we adopt this holistic way of farming, you know, what do we do to try to combat that? We get one of these. Tell us about this.
Actually, we got two of those. And this is the new electric tractors, okay? And we did a work with spray with this, and also we used the mower. So far, so good, huh?
Yeah, this is one of the very first electric tractors in the nation.
Yes.
It's made by a company called Monarch. The cool thing about it, I don't think the government is allowing us to do this yet, but eventually this tractor could be autonomous. Wouldn't it be nice, David, if we could just be sitting up on the terrace with a glass of wine, you could have your iPad out, and you could just be using the tractor, doing the work, and you're just sitting there having a glass of wine. Wouldn't that be the day?
Well, that would be the day. I don't know if I'm going to see it, but yes, this tractor, we got the computer going. There's so many features on this tractor.
Sure.
So, but the tractor itself during harvest time, this is going to be a great tractor for harvest time. You got a lot of lights, everything is good. Thank you.
Well, and also what I'm excited about, we're going to store this behind our warehouse. And what do you see on top of our warehouse roof over there?
Oh, yes.
Solar panels.
Solar panels.
So here we're going to be able to even recharge the tractor virtually for free because we're taking the energy from the sun, taking that, putting energy into the tractor, which ends up taking the weeds out, which gives then more energy to the vines. It's a big circle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's nice. Well, thank you. This is great. This is really nice, and we're looking forward to have more of those.
All right. It does take a little bit more effort on our part. It's better for our planet.
And better for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got to give a quick shout out to Russell, who does all our video productions. We just did that with one quick take, but he's a really good editor, so he takes out a lot of our flubs. But anyway, Brooks, just quickly, and I know we're anxious to get to this next flight. Just at the 30,000 foot view, what does this decision mean to Sattui as we go forward down the road?
Well, it's certainly a learning curve, and it can be a steep learning curve. We are dealing with, unfortunately, every year there's at least one or two more pests that are being introduced into North America from Asia, Europe, you have it. And so we have a new problem on our hands. And so when we have a toolbox and you take a lot of your tools out of the toolbox, you really have to think a lot harder. You have to work harder to deal with how do you farm so that you get the best quality fruit with the least impact. And so we're always scratching our heads. And so we're using things like releases of parasitic wasps that prey on mealybugs, for example. There's ladybird bird releases. You can use natural enemies of some of these pests to try to keep them under control. We've had a very cool year this year. We're seeing a bit more of a problem in the vineyard. It's called powdery mildew, and it's a little white mildew that will grow in the grapes early season. Right now, we're seeing less and less of it, but it can have an impact on the quality and the yields of the grapes themselves. So going organic is going to present some challenges, which we're completely up for. And I think that with the last 10 years that we've had to work with Vittorio's vineyard and farm organically, we've learned quite a bit. And now we're just going to continue to learn. We're going to share ideas with our neighbors and with our colleagues that are facing the same issues. But this is probably the biggest decision we've made in terms of farming probably forever. And we are totally committed to making this not only the success in terms of our impact on the environment, but a great success for wine quality also.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thank you all and our vineyard team for embracing this, and again, very excited about it. So anyway, well, we have a lot more wines to taste. So we're ready to begin our second flight. We're going to begin with Petite Syrah, and Pete, why don't you go ahead and kick us off for our next flight?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce our 2022 Napa Valley Petite Syrah blend. I think if you lined up the wide array of Sattui wines on a table, and from one end you're starting with soft and subtle and elegant, on the other end is powerful and intense, the Petite Syrah is going to be the bookend on the powerful side. It's just in the nature of the Petite Syrah grape to produce a wine that is densely tannic and have just really bold, heavy structures. However, that's not the only thing that Petite Syrah has to offer. When you combine the tannin with the really, really dark, inky purple color, that's where you get richness in wines. And this wine has plenty of richness. The flavors are going to be, blueberry, chocolate, pepper. You get lots of interesting flavors to go along with all that richness. On the winemaking side, we try to capture those flavors, those aromas, that great color, but without letting the tannin go overboard. And that's really a challenge with Petite Syrah. The window for when to separate the wine from the skins is very small. We taste these wines multiple times per day, especially the Petite Syrah, and a half a day can make a big difference. So that window is pretty small, and it's like it's on a race car zooming by, and you really have to pay attention. And that's why Petite Syrah is pretty hard to make. And I think that's why you don't see a lot of really high-end Petite Syrahs out there on the market. And that's contributes to why it has somewhat of a cult following. There are people that they seek these wines out. The people that like Petite Syrah really love Petite Syrah. And that's why it's really a pleasure to make this product. It requires a lot of precision, a lot of attention, but what you're left with is a wine that no other variety comes close to, with the structure and color and these interesting flavors that it has. It really is a lot of fun to work with. So, John, what do you think? What do you think of the 2022 Petite Syrah, and what type of food could possibly match up with a wine of this stature?
Oh, John, you're on mute.
Now I'm back. Thanks, Tom. This is one of my favorite wines. I like big wines, but ours is in terms of being perfect. It's just about perfect. It's a beautiful opaque color, fresh blackberries, blueberry aromas, which really jump out of the glass, and as far as being bold, it's got intense flavors of sweet plum and black pepper, but it's really balanced with sweet oak and firm tannins. Wine. Boy, this is something that I love to have with like a beef lasagna. Moroccan beef stew would be one. Polenta and sausage, chili spiced burgers. I mean, anything that's got a little density to it is a great compliment to Petite Syrah. There's nothing petite about Petite Syrah for sure.
That's right. Yeah, it is related to the Syrah grape, but it is a distinct grape, and Petite might make you think it's a little sister of a Syrah, but it's far from it. It's almost a Syrah that's just been elevated to a whole new level.
Steroids.
That's right. Jason, what do you think about Petite Syrah? I know you've always liked that variety.
That's true. I just really like it because there's not a lot of them out there. You're right in that they're hard to find. And so I think it's just really neat that we are able to make it. And I gotta say, Pete, I think we nailed it. Being able to find that window of extracting all of those amazing flavors and the intensity of it without making it tannic, I mean, that's a big challenge to do. So congrats on that. I also really like it because it's a little mysterious. Like you said, Petite Syrah means small Syrah, but it was a name because they thought it was Syrah, but DNA testing has shown that it is its own variety. Syrah is just one of the parents of that. And that name just kind of stuck. And so we still call it Petite Syrah. But in other parts of the world, they actually call this Durif. And so it's a very fun, unique, mysterious wine that's not seen very often. We, as winemakers, we know of it because we use it often in blends. But to be able to have it as a single variety is really, really cool. And then maybe if Ali can show the vineyard map. So this is our Napa Valley Petite Syrah. This is a blend of different vineyards from around Napa Valley, but a majority of this blend will be coming from a vineyard called Voyager. It's right on the cusp of Oak Knoll, and this vineyard site is absolutely phenomenal. It's on the alluvial fan, so it has a perfect gradient, allowing extra moisture to kind of wick away from the vineyard. We're able to control vigor that way. It has a southwest facing slope, so we're able to get all the sunlight that we need in order to get the right fruit characters that we're looking for in the Petite Syrah. And so we feel really lucky to be able to be farming this getting fruit from this piece of land here. And then another part of this is that our production is very limited on this. We actually only produce 266 cases of this. And so I think a pretty good chunk of that is actually sold through futures. So if you don't get it through futures, I don't know how much is going to be left after that. So this is the opportunity.
Well said, Jason. Well, if we're ready, let's go right on.
Tom, if I could just add an anecdote about Petite Syrah, because I've always found it funny. A lot of the old timers here in the Valley and in California, I started my career in about 44 years ago, and I would go around and talk to growers, and we'd look at, well, there's the Cabernet Sauvignon, and I got Merlot or Zinfandel down here, and well, what's in the back corner over there? What is that? And they'd say, oh, that's the pets. And I'd say, the pets? What do you mean pets? So yeah, that's Petite Syrah. And I said, Petite Syrah. Are you kidding me? And I found that was the name of this grape of all the old timers, Petite Syrah.
That's so true. When I first moved up here and met Kara, 43 years ago, and she introduced me to her Uncle Ernie, and that was one of the first vineyards that I learned how to prune, and he just called it Pets. And I go, what the hell is Pets? And I was a newbie, but anyway, so that was the first vines that I learned how to prune here 43 years ago. Anyway, thank you for that delicious wine. I'm amazed how you guys make this wine without it being tannic. Here, this is a 22. I mean, the tannins are there, but they're integrated, they're chewy. And for such a huge wine, you are definitely doing magic to make this wine be so luscious yet so rich without the grippy tannins because there's a lot of not so well made Petite Syrahs out there that after you take one sip, you feel like they're stripping the enamel off your teeth. So
that's right.
Great job. Hey, so let's move on. So now we're going to go down South America way. Jason, you want to take it away for our Malbec?
Yeah. So I'd like to showcase our 2022 Napa Valley Malbec. And this Malbec is showing phenomenally. Just taking a look at the color, it's got great ruby color. This is a variety that is one of the 5 Bordeaux varietals. We don't talk about it as much as Cab and Merlot, but this is one of the 5 that is often in the Bordeaux blend and can be found in our Paradiso. And so this is a showcase of what that variety really can do. In the nose, it really shows amazing mixed dark berries with plum and dark chocolate. And on the palate, oh yeah, the fruitiness of this wine really comes through. It has a little bit lower tannin. I mean, coming from a Petite Syrah to this Malbec, it's definitely a lot lower on that tannin threshold. I would, comparing it to other Bordeaux varietals, I would say this is a little bit more like a Merlot, where it's kind of that stuffing of a Bordeaux blend, whereas the Cab and the other varieties really kind of build the structure. This kind of fills it out and softens it a little bit more. I'd say it's a little different than Merlot in that flavor profile. We're able to bring a whole nother element, another aroma to the Bordeaux blend. But this is a great representation of what Malbec is on its own. This is a wine where I feel like I could have one glass and not have any tannin fatigue. We talk about that in winemaking quite a bit, where as you're tasting wine, your palate gets a little bit fatigued from all the aggressive tannins. But a wine like Malbec, you can have a glass of this and then go for a second and maybe even more from there. So that's what I really love about it. So John, I always hear you promoting this wine, and I hear that you love it. What do you see is the best characters of it?
I think that this is another one in our portfolio that garners great reviews from our members and guests, and it sells out quickly. I mean, it kind of is a tell that when a wine sells out quickly, it's well made, and it's popular, and it's something that people want to take home and enjoy at a meal as well. So you know, this wine, as I smell it, just really delights my senses. The color is deep, dark, and concentrated. It's got this little hypnotic aromas of wild strawberries, maybe some spice, allspice, some black pepper. It's fruit forward. It's big flavors of cherry pie and vanilla and bittersweet, the cocoa. Yet it's moderate in the acidity and medium tannin. So it's a very, very drinkable wine. And what's there not to like about it at all? So
that's amazing. So I heard that also. Are we almost sold out of this one? Is that correct?
Yeah, we almost are. And here's, along with the Malbec and the Merlot, the M's, it seems like we always tend to run out of the M's too soon. So this is another great wine that could lay down in your cellar or just enjoy it right now, for that matter. We're sold out, but you know, as I think about something to pair it with, I think of maybe a little Petite filet mignon. Better a Gott's burger at our local place. A pizza from La Prima Pizzeria here in St. Helena, or maybe a little carpaccio from the Cook's Restaurant in St. Helena as well. So I think this is a future that sells out, and it's a great selection for your cellar, or as a gift, or a bottle to bring to dinner at a friend's house. Jason, it's for me, it's one of my favorites.
That just sounds delicious. I'm ready to pick one up, pizza up on the way, and grab a bottle of this Malbec for dinner for Sasha and I and the kids. So, Tom, you spoke a little bit about where else can you get Malbecs in this world? Can you enlighten us a little bit on that?
Well, yeah, just quickly. So I think the cruise is virtually sold out, but in 2025, we're heading down to South America, and we're going to be doing a pre-cruise in Mendoza, and then we're sailing from Buenos Aires to Rio. But you know, in Argentina, Malbec is king, and I had the pleasure and opportunity to be down there in November of last year, and I have to tell you, the Malbecs that I tasted could stand up to any of the big Cabernets we have here in the Napa Valley. And so I think we can't ignore Malbec as just a great standalone wine. I know in France, it's a blender, and certainly we've treated it here as both a blender and as a standalone. But I think there's a place for this wine to stand on its own, and I think the future here in Napa can only just increase. And Brooks, what's your opinion? Can Malbec ever get to the stature of Cabernet here in Napa?
Oh, that would be a big reach, I think, Tom, since we've we've kind of built our reputation on Cabernet Sauvignon in this valley. But certainly, I think, as already has been discussed, it's very similar to Merlot. Merlot is a little more dainty, a little more aromatic, but Merlot and Malbec, we often co-ferment, and it makes a fabulous blend. And so Malbec will definitely have a great place here with the best Cabernets as a blender, but as a standalone as well. And I think this wine just will show you what it can do on its own. And as we continue to learn more about the variety and get a little bit more experience with it here in our own cellars, we're just finding great success. And as John said, it's a crowd pleaser. It's it's kind of a sleeper red wine, and then all of a sudden it walks out the door and you're out of it. So I think that speaks for itself, and I think it certainly has a future home here in Napa Valley.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Well, any other comments from the winemaking team on this M wine?
I'll just say that Malbec is just fun. It's a great wine. The grapes are good to eat as well. They're nice big berries. The wine it's fruity. It's got great color. What I really like about it is it leaves you with a sensation of juiciness on your palate. So that's one of the reasons why it is such a good blender for Cabernet, because Cabernet can, especially 100% Cab, can tend to be a little bit dry on the finish, and that's where Malbec can come in and take that edge off that dryness and just give you this kind of mouth-watering finish on the wine. So it's really useful as a blender, but on its own is just it's a really great fun wine to have.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Well, I'm excited about Malbec's future, and Brooks knows I came back from Argentina with all these great ideas about fermenting and concrete. So we bought 2 more concrete eggs. I know Brooks is looking at getting some amphora, because this is what they're doing down in Argentina. They're, besides just fermenting in steel, they're fermenting in concrete, fermenting in clay. They're doing all sorts of really fun, interesting things. And so we're going to be doing some more experiments on that as well. Well, let's get on. So we have the next wine is our 22 Estate Vittorio's Cab. Brooks, would you like to introduce that?
Yeah, well, we already have seen, the video of you and David out there and talking about how we farmed this vineyard and for the last 10, 12 years organically. And then also how we've observed some changes in the characteristics of the wine. As you can see on your screen, we're Napa Green certified. That was a photo of Dario in the vineyard, and it's named, of course, after his great-grandfather Vittorio. It's the namesake of our winery here. And so this is just an example as you read down through these bullet points. This is the direction that we're trying to go with our business efforts in relation to the community. And Dario certainly has been very generous with local organizations, nonprofits. This year we had sheep in the vineyard for the first time, and that was quite an experience. We were lucky enough to have a big chocolate brown llama with those guys too. And I asked the sheep herder, I said, "Oh, so that's the llama to keep the coyotes away?" And she said, "No, the llama is to keep the people away, because they would love to jump the fence and go in and pet the sheep." So we're trying to think outside the box here. The wine itself, as we've said, is evolving. I think with with our approach to be more gentle in our farming practices. Our soils here are alluvial, but they run various different directions across the vineyard. So we have both clay and gravel, and so we have 20 vines that are have ample water. They're sitting in clay, and then we have another 30 vines that are in gravel. And so we're out there scratching our heads. Okay, what do we do here? And what we've done is we run a separate drip line so that we can water the ones that need a little bit more. And this type of custom tending to the vines is paying dividends, and it makes us proud to be farming this property, because it is a really unique spot, and we're doing the best we can to make these fabulous wines. And this particular wine, the Vittorio's, is just so delicious.
Do we have time to watch the video? I think Ali maybe had it queued up.
When Dario revived his family's winery here in the Napa Valley, and this is about 1976, the original purchase he made was for about 2.5 acres. It was an old walnut grove, and for about $15 a square foot, he built our original winery and deli and marketplace. And at that time, we didn't have any vineyards. We purchased all our fruit, and when I started the winery in the harvest of 1980, the vineyard just to the south of us was owned by a doctor from Marin County, but it was farmed by an old timer here in the valley. His name was Charlie Volpe. And I remember meeting him about 1980, and he'd come into the tasting room, of course, all full of dust. He'd been on the tractor. He was always complaining that the trash from the picnic grounds was going into his vineyard. I said, well, Charlie, I'll do the best we can, but how about a glass of wine? And so we became good friends, and eventually in 1985 we purchased, which is now Vittorio's vineyard. And oh boy, what a great purchase. And and at the time, we were a little bit nervous about the price. We paid I think $800,000-900,000 for the 34 acres. That's about what you buy an acre of vineyards for today. What a great purchase, and the rest is kind of history. And so those early years, the early 80s, there was some old vine Zinfandel. We made wine from that. And then our very first Sauvignon Blanc came from right here. And so now Vittorio's vineyard is mostly Cabernet Sauvignon, but with a few other varieties. And we're very proud of that. So as you're driving up Highway 29, Vittorio's vineyard is the first thing you see. We have close to about 1/3 of a mile of frontage right here on 29 for Vittorio's vineyard, separated by a long driveway of olive trees. It's just a great position to have an estate vineyard when you have an event at the winery, or you're attending our harvest ball, or one of our many events. Our Vittorio's vineyard lawn is actually right smack dab in the middle of the vineyard. It's just a sweet, sweet spot, and we're so very proud of the wines.
What makes this area special, it really was the origin of winemaking in Napa Valley. Most of the initial wineries and wine growing occurred here in the 1850s, 1860s, 70s. The soils here are really unique. In fact, one of the most unique spots in the entire world. There's over 21 soil types represented here. Over millennia, the oceans have entered the land, they've receded, the land's been uplifted. And as an example of that, I've got a couple of rocks that I picked up in this very vineyard. This one is one of my favorites. It doesn't look like much, but it's my belief that this comes from the age of the dinosaurs. It's over 60 million years old. And it just gives you an idea of the history, the geologic history of this area. This is chert, green chert, and it comes from marine organisms that filtered down to the bottom of the ocean. They were compressed over eons
with soil and layers of dirt, and then uplifted because of this tectonic activity. And then of course there's obsidian. Our area is very rich in obsidian from what's referred to as the Sonoma volcanics about 5 million years ago. And it's all derived from alluvial soils that have come down the mountain behind us, the Mayacamas Range on the west and the Vaca Range on the east. So our farming practices have always followed the sustainable rules. We always try to use the least impactful chemicals, whether it's herbicides, fungicides, all of the typical farming materials that all growers use. But we made a commitment in 2009 to start farming organically. And we're certified by CCOF. It's a 3-year process to get certified, so you have to show what materials you've used for 3 consecutive years. So that was in 2012. So for the last 10 years, we've been farming organically here. We feel very proud of that achievement because organic farming does cost more, and we're committed to making that as a statement to our community to protect the health of our employees, protect the health of our neighbors. We're willing to spend that extra money, but why do it? Does it make greater quality grapes? We believe that it does. It gives us a better understanding of soil and rejuvenate the biosphere here in our vineyard. We can see more birds, more insects, more lizards, more life across the board.
We've been producing Vittorio's Vineyard Cab for decades now, and it's certainly been part of our portfolio as one of our top cabs. Once we had really started farming Vittorio's organically, the wine to me just took on a whole nother level of complexity and flavors.
Well, I think there's a clear line between wine quality and farming operations. I think with organic farming, the health of the soil, the health of the vine is increased. The main thing is become more plush and velvety and round. These grapes often made a fairly robust, really firm wine. And that is just polished, it's smoothed out, and it's much more drinkable, much more enjoyable. The grapes evolve, and I think that's because of our organic farming. I think they're benefiting more.
I don't have a screen share or anything for Vangone.
And just smelling this wine, it's just jumping out of the glass, that classic, savoriness to it. How would you?
Mom said cut it. I think I'm tired.
It always has, of course, black fruit. We get black currant, black licorice.
Week, this month,
There's a little bit of mint, of course, all of classical Cabernet aromas. But what makes this distinct for me is the complexity of all these things coming together in the glass, and it just effuses out of the glass. And of course, during the winemaking, we're using French oak barrels, and they play a role as well.
I love this texture of this wine on the palate. With today's Vittorio's Cab, the tannins are there, but they're really integrated. It's just almost like a fine grain.
Vittorio's vineyard is primarily a Cabernet Sauvignon vineyard, but Cabernet lends itself to all kinds of wonderful, beautiful blends by putting in small amounts of other varieties.
Yeah, we really let Cabernet shine through. That's the challenge too, Brooks, with making a vineyard designated cab, where if you're making, let's say, a Napa Valley cab, you can blend from many, many different vineyards. When you put a vineyard name, 95% of the fruit has to come from that vineyard. So it really does speak of a place.
With single vineyard wines, the vineyard has to shine. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. So it has to have a standalone character and quality to it. So it makes it a more challenge, there's no question.
It's certainly one that we're really, really proud of. When you put Vittorio's name on something, we have to honor him, and I think we do a really good job of it. This is really the origin or the provenance of Napa Valley farming happened right here in St. Helena. And for us to be making a wine, from this dirt that was really pioneered here, I feel very proud of that. And it's just so reflective of the magic here in the Napa Valley that we're able to craft wines made from such a spectacular spot.
Well, I think that video kind of says it all. This is a pretty spectacular wine. It's delicious right now. John, why should folks buy this wine?
Well, for me, Tom, I've always described this when I'm in the tasting rooms. It's delicate, it's round, it's smooth, it's approachable, which encourages another sip or two or more. And it's just something that brings a smile to most of our customers. And for me, I think it's something that should be in your cellar because it never disappoints. It's just really, really, in the last years I've been here, this is probably the 2019, which we're on right now, but I've tasted 2022, and it's really fabulous. And if you don't get this one now, it's you'll be disappointed. It's a great wine to put in your cellar.
Well, and the critics are finally recognizing the quality of Vittorio's as well, as evidenced by some of the great scores that we've been getting. So I'm really happy now that they've recognized something that we've known for some time, that this is a solid cab and also a great value. You know, as everyone knows, what's happened to the price of Cabernets in the Napa Valley, they've just skyrocketed. And I can't stress enough, you know, how important pricing is to us, and that we remain 100% direct to consumer and cut out the middleman and try to offer really great wines at prices that you would not pay down the road. And it's crazy what some of the Cabernet prices are for here in the Valley. And of course, a lot of it, I think, is smoke and mirrors, and good for them. I guess it's marketing, but I think if you let the wines speak for themselves, I think we're right there.
And Tom, if I may, I think Brooks touched upon it. You know, farming organically changes the whole perception and actuality of the wine as well. It's delicious.
Yeah. Well, look, we're running a little long, and I know we've waited to get to this Vangone, which I think Jason's going to introduce, and so take it away, Jason.
All right. I know we're going a little long, so I'll try to speed things on, but we really got to give a little bit of time to this Vangone. I know when we were looking for a new vineyard site for a good cab to bring on, we were searching high and low, and we were looking for something really, really special. And we happened upon this piece of property. Now, it's Napa Valley appellated, but where it's located is absolutely exceptional. It's right in between Pritchard Hill and Atlas Peak. It's in this amazing, it's like an amazing mountainous terrain that overlooks Richter Reservoir. And so it's just an amazing site. So we're really happy to be able to make fruit from here, or be able to make wines from here. And just to look at the color, I mean, that just tells you everything. You can't even, if you put your hand behind this glass, you can't even see anything behind it. It's so thick. You could put this in an ink pen and write with it. It's so amazing. And so that's the color, but on the nose, you really get that black currant, blackberry, black sage, all of those characteristics that are iconic to Cabernet Sauvignon are all found in here. And then it's intertwined with some beautiful floral, slight violet aroma. And then on the palate, it's just so plush, so much to give. I can't oversay, like, this wine is an exceptional one. This is one that you can lay down for years to come. And so the best way, this is one of our more expensive wines. So definitely the best way to obtain this wine is through our futures program. And so this is where you're going to get the best price for one of the best wines that we make. Pete, did you want to describe the difference between mountain fruit and valley floor a little bit?
Sure. One of the reasons that Napa Valley is such a special place is that we have this variety of climates and soils and terrains, and that directly translates to an array of different wine styles. On the valley floor, the soils are fertile, they're deep, the vines grow big, there's lots of fruit. You end up with wines that are have luscious flavors, velvety textures, great balance. On the other hand, mountain vineyards are completely different, and that's what we're dealing with Vangone Vineyard. The vines really struggle up on the mountains. The soils are thin, they're rocky, there's less water available, less nutrients, so the vines stay really small. That results in smaller clusters, smaller berries, but the wines, on the other hand, are huge. They're huge tannins, huge flavors, huge aromas, and huge color, as you mentioned. That's because the smaller the berries are, the more concentrated all of those different components are in that same little berry. And I think we find the 2022 Vangone very rich, really dark in color, and you can tell that there's a tannin structure there. This wine is going to age very well for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really well said. Brooks, can you tell us, I mean, this 22 vintage is tasting amazing. How does it compare to some of the more recent vintages that we've had from this vineyard?
Well, I think 2022, as we talked about earlier in the program, was a drought year. And this vineyard is, it's so picturesque and awesome. It's perched on a cliff, literally a cliff, about almost a 2,000-foot drop down to Rector Reservoir. And there's a small little bench, and you go to the edge of the vineyard and you look directly down almost 2,000 feet. So the location is just amazing. When comparing years to years, I think the main thing that I'm seeing is the evolution of the age of the vines. When I first talked to the vineyard owner and the vineyard manager about the possibility of getting some fruit off of this vineyard, the vines were, I think, 1 year old, maybe at most 2 years old. And so you walk around the vineyard and it's just, there's no soil. You can't see the dirt there. It's just rock. And it's rock that had to be excavated and ground up and then put back in the vineyard. So it's one of the most dramatic hillside vineyards that we work with. As it's well drained and concentrated, low yields, you know, the 2022 was great. 2021, how far are we from releasing that? Maybe next year. They're all just so phenomenal. So the wines are out of this world, really. And so when I first approached Tom years ago, I said, hey, I found this little vineyard. We should go look at it. And we both agreed this is going to be something really special. So we're really pleased to have it in our portfolio.
Now, Brooks, it looks like we're getting a question in from our audience. The question is, this wine is great. What is the projected aging on this wine?
Well, the structure of the wine should call for at least a minimum of 8 to 10 years. This is always a question that it's a little difficult to answer because you have to understand what the taste preference is of the person asking the question. If you like still a softer Cabernet, but still with lively fruit, then 8 to 10 years. If you're looking for something that is a collector's item that you're going to open and it's just going to blow your socks off, it's got to be 15 to 25 years. So that would be my answer, somewhere between 8 and 25 years.
Gosh, how do we wait that long? I don't know if I can do that, Brooks.
I don't know. You better take care of yourself.
I better.
Well, I just, when I think of this wine, I just quickly want to add, there's amazing wine made here in the Napa Valley, and there's this upper echelon of Cabernets that sell for, $300, $500, $800 a bottle. And in my opinion, this is one of those wines. It's just, it has the provenance, the origin of a great site. It's just dark, inky, complex. It's going to take really years for it to really develop into a great wine, but it's just one of those, this is just one of those wines that you could really hang your hat on and say, this is a Cabernet that is destined to be a classic here in the Napa Valley. That's what I think of it.
Yeah.
John, you agree?
It just to wrap up a little bit, we farm so many of our own acres, and we had a taste of those today. But when you find a vineyard like Vangone, and I was just floored immediately with it. I said, we have to get fruit from this vineyard. And I think the proof is in the pudding. This wine is phenomenal. It's just beautiful. And it's going to be well worth buying some and putting them in your cellar.
And I just might add, because it might be some confusing to some, this is a wine that's always been what we call an allocated wine. It's only about allocated to our top tier club members, but we wanted to do something for those of you that were on this Zoom today. So we are giving everyone that participated in this Zoom an opportunity to buy this wine. Normally you have to be a Gold or President's Club member to purchase this wine. So we're hopefully we have enough to go around, but it's a very special wine and something that you should just have in your cellars. It's not an everyday drinking wine, but it's one of those special wines that you lay a case down and you drink a bottle a year or something like that, and then live with it over a course of a decade or more. And I think you'll be floored as to how this wine will age.
Yeah, it's a special wine for sure, and yeah, I encourage people to take advantage of the sale today.
Well, and speaking of that, we've made it through all 8 wines, so good job, everyone. Hopefully, everyone's glasses are drained or close to that. Thank you all for watching. We just have a couple housekeeping items, then we'll let you go and get back to dinner or whatever you're doing. So Winks, how do people order these wines tonight?
It's all right here in your packet. You can just select the number of cases you'd like here, fill out your name, address, and mail it in, or you can text us, or you can use the old-fashioned way of a fax number, which is 707-963-4324. Just don't ignore that, okay? Just scan it and send it to us. And I would be remiss, Tom, if you'd let me just say hi to my wife in South Carolina, and thanks for all the groups watching with you. Okay, I know that's true. Okay, back to this. It's really just a fabulous wine. All the wines we featured today are great. The Vangone is special because it is a allocated wine and perfect, a beautiful package. And if you need one of these cases in your cellar to enjoy for the next decade or more.
And then also too, they can, if you have a rep with the winery, you can just give them a call. They can help you with that. And isn't there a kind of a time constraint on this, Wing?
There is. So Tom, within a week, you can order these wines and get the discount that we're providing today as if you were at a barrel tasting party. So one case of one of our futures would be 20% off. You buy 5 cases, it's 25% off. It's a time to buy this wine. And if you want some of the futures and some of the finished wines, you can do that also and get the maximum discount. And Tom doesn't know this. I might not be here tomorrow, but I've said, you buy them today, we'll give you a $29 freight fee for every case you buy. Okay, so I may not see you again, so I'll wave. but I'm sure it's a great time to take advantage of the wine specials. And if you buy 5 cases, you get 25% off, and you get the $29 shipping, even for futures, even 2 years from now. Don't tell Tom.
Good, good. Anyway, great deal. Hey, thank you everyone for watching and participating today. Thank you to my panel. You know, every time I listen to all of you, I'm in awe of how smart and well-spoken and how blessed I am to work with such a great team of professionals. You know, what we do is not done by accident, and we just have so many great team members that make Sattui such a special place to come to work every day. Also like to thank Allie Patterson. This Zoom would not happen without her. She is the producer. She is the woman that just makes this thing happen. And thank you for all your hard work. It's been just one of those weeks here at Sattui. We talked about doing these Zooms back in the pandemic. Now we got COVID coming back again. We got some key people out, and just life goes on. But we seem to get through it because we have people that really care, and that I'm really blessed for. Also, I think I mentioned him earlier, Russell Perry. Great job in the videos, and then I can't say enough about our vineyard team, David Behar. Great job in the videos and what his team does to make and grow us these incredible wines. And then just lastly to Alex Garcia on the support staff. I don't know how many thousands or tens of thousands of bottles that he filled up and we shipped out, but a lot that was all hand done, obviously. And so anyway, unless I'm forgetting anything, just thank you all for participating. And I think we got to do this again at some point. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Brooks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.